to the latest episode of How Did I Get Here? My guest today is a man by the name of Russell Gatewood. Currently, he's known best as half of the DJ duo, the world famous Rick and Rush Show. I met him when I was an intern at Universal Music Distribution. Uh, I was a marketing intern, not for Russell, uh, but for a woman by the name of Jeanette. But we kind of forged a friendship. We've stayed in contact over the years. He's a really great guy that I always enjoy talking to. We talked about how he got to start in DJing, uh, some time spent with a company that I'd never heard of called Music Buddha, which is known as the first uh, internet music recommendation site. It eventually got acquired by, I believe, Rhapsody and then reacquired by Apple. So that means they did something right. Anywho, we had a good chat. I will make a note about, or a correction about our conversation. I say that Russell is my first guest with a beard. He is definitely not my first guest with a beard. In fact, nearly all of my male guests have beards, but none of them as epic as Russell Gatewood's beard. Uh, my beard, also epic. Nobody's seen it on the podcast because you can't see these things. It's audio. So when you hear the faint wisps of hair across the microphone, that's because both of us have huge beards. Anywho, uh, this was a really great chat. Enjoy it. Uh, Once again, don't forget to tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to review and rate. And for the love of God Almighty, don't forget to vote. This may be the most important election in the history of elections. And I'm not just saying that. Like, I genuinely think democracy in America is on the line. So please vote early. Don't vote often because that's illegal. If you're doing absentee, don't forget to track your ballot. If you're going in person, don't forget to wear a mask, social distance, all that stuff. Yeah, and on with the show.
Hi, I'm Michelle Varay.
And I'm Kimberly Trung, and we are the host of Crush Fictionally, a podcast all about your favorite fictional characters from movies, TV shows, and more.
Each episode, we pick a theme, curate a list of characters that we love, why we love them, and some fun facts about the people who created them.
So if you've ever felt a true connection with a fictional character,
tune in to Crush Fictionally on Campfire Media,
or wherever you find your podcast.
Hello, welcome to the latest episode of How Did I Get Here? Today we have one of my favorite people and someone that kind of helped me push my way into the music world, Russell Gatewood. Hi, it's really nice to see your face. It's nice to see any face that's a full face right now, but it's especially nice to see yours. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Beards unite.
Yes, you are my first bearded guest, actually.
Really?
Really, somehow in the music business. How did that happen? I don't know.
How is that possible?
I think because I've asked more women than men.
That I can see that. Okay.
So the first question I have for you is a question that every single person I've asked this is for some reason hated. And I hope you don't hate it, but maybe you will. I don't know. Do you remember what the first experience with music that you had that made you think, man, this is the rest of my life?
No, I don't hate it, but it's a good question. No one's ever asked me that before. I think it was my first high school dance.
Interesting. What was it about the dance that made that compelled you to go into music?
Well, I take that back. It's not my first high school dance. It was the first high school dance that I went to that was outside of my school. A friend of mine, a neighbor of mine, we caught two buses to a girls' high school in San Francisco. I went to a boys' high school in San Francisco, and we caught two buses, and went to a dance. I was a freshman in high school, so I was 13, and I was already, just fascinated by the whole high school dance. How everything was separated and how much fun everybody was having. But then there was this DJ on stage, and I'd never seen a DJ before, and I was blown away. Literally, my mouth was hanging open. I couldn't understand one how he was going song to song without being any break, and I was fascinated with his ability to kind of he had the crowd in the palm of his hand. Everybody was waiting for everything he said. He had a crew up there with him. He had lights. It was thematic. He played all the good music. And I turned to my friend and I said, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. And that's when it started. That was it. That was the page.
It sounds like this other high school dances were way better than any school dance that I've ever been to.
In retrospect, probably not, but it was my first. I'm a little bit older than you, so I have to remember that at this point, this was at the very, very beginning of hip hop. It was the beginning of new wave. Um, so it was convergence of all these different genres of music that I wasn't even aware of, and it just had me wide open.
Yeah, so did the DJ manage to like segue between, say, I don't know, a Grandmaster Flash song to a Duran Duran song?
No, not that type of a train wreck. No, but he was able to. He he's matter of fact, he's still DJing now, believe it or not. And I give him total credit for everything that I've been able to do. But he had a section of the night that he would call "Punkin' with the Funk," and he would play new wave songs. And believe it or not, black people were dancing to it, and it was an unbelievable amount of energy in the room. It was sick. He would play hip hop and R&B, and then he had this one section called "Punkin' with the Funk," and you'd hear Tony Basil, the Go Go's, the Vapors, the Knack, the B-52s, and it was the thing, the Romantics. He was playing all that stuff, and it was working. Gary Newman was Gary Newman was huge because there was uh, a bridge between hip hop and actually the bridge between for us out here on the West Coast, the bridge between hip hop and new wave came from electronic music, and so Kraftwerk was a bridge between those two genres, and he was able to weave this so it worked, and it was bananas.
Yeah, it's funny because I always think of Quincy Jones signing New Order as the bridge between R&B and new wave, but Kraftwerk makes a lot more sense because I mean Kraftwerk was like those were beats that were made for sampling.
Well, yeah, but what happened was Kraftwerk was being used by the b boys were using that to dance and boogaloo and strut. They were using, um, for instance, they would take Trans Europe Express and put it at 45 speed, and they would dance to that. So that was how it entered our space. And then when we got to computer world, numbers was just this incredible. The song was just, oh my god, where is this what is this song? Where is this coming from? And then that led directly into Africa Bambata and Planet Rock, and the rest is history.
Yeah, the history that we're still kind of living with. I mean, hip hop now is so very electronic.
I shouldn't even say history. I should just say, and that's how it began for me. Everybody has their own experience, but for me, that's how it began.
So, at what point did you start learning how to DJ? Like, when did you first get your hands on a crossfader and figure out how to do that side of it?
Well, I was still fascinated with it, but the next 2 years I was kind of dedicated towards football, and trying to learn everything I could about football. But DJing was still something that was in my head. And when I was a junior in high school, I found out there was a guy at our church who was a DJ at a roller skating rink. And turns out his family was good friends with my family. And one day after church, our families met for lunch over their house. And he was an older guy. And I just begged him and begged him and begged him, please, can you show me how you do that? And he brought me into his bedroom, and he had his turntable set up in there. And he showed me the turntables. And for the first time, I saw a mixer because I had never seen a mixer. I never didn't know how people were going from record to record. And he explained to me how it was, explained how it was done, let me play around with it, and then I just knew it's something I wanted to do.
It's amazing. So, when did you start actually doing it in front of people?
um, well, I went away to college and I came back quickly, and uh, no, that's a lie. The first time I DJ'd in front of people, I this guy, I actually got him to the gig to DJ our senior prom. And part of the deal for me, I didn't want a kickback or finder's fee for it, but I asked him, I said, can I DJ 3 songs during your set? Which no one would ever do that, let somebody who doesn't know how to do
Yeah.
that. And I remember I played during the prom, I got up behind a turntable and everybody went crazy. And I played We Got the Beat, Let's Groove, and one other song. I can't remember the other song. It might have been My Serena.
Man, that's like a scene from a movie, though. Like,
Yeah. I need to call Judd Apatow right now and get him to work on it. But that was the deal. That was the first time I DJ'd in front of people, and the rush I got from that was crazy.
I can imagine. I can also imagine like your peers going insane for that.
Oh yeah, because no one knew at all. And you didn't have to be a good DJ then because it was so new. If you could just do it, you were good. You're kind of and so that was it. That was the deal.
All right, so you blew people away in high school, and then you went off to college, and you played football primarily throughout college, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, but I got hurt in college. In my first, I never even played it down. I got hurt in practice. So I came back to California, and I was in the JC system, and I met some other guys who were DJing, and we formed a crew because that's what you did back then. And we practiced and learned and practiced and learned and spun out and did parties for $15 in a nickel bag or whatever. And that's how it all started to grow from there. And then after a while, then I realized I could really I need to treat this like a business. and really just invest in myself by learning the craft and learning how other people do things. And I flew out to New York and spun, went record crates, digging for records at Rock and Soul in New York, and I went to the tunnel. I went to different spots to hear other DJs, and came back with all this newfound hunger and knowledge. And um, the hobby became a revenue stream after a while.
Yeah. So, logistics question. So, when it started becoming what you did for a living as opposed to your hobby, uh,
Well, actually,
how did you?
it really never became what I did for a living.
Okay.
It really it didn't. I worked for and I was in healthcare for 11 years. Um, I um, I was I worked for Carol Shorenstein for a couple of years. I worked. I had various jobs. It didn't become a bona fide huge revenue stream until maybe 2006 or seven, and I was still with Universal then when that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then I'm gonna get back to that crossover. So you did a bunch of day jobs while DJing at night, and so it was something that was kind of it it made you money, but it was always just sort of like a side gig essentially, right? Yeah. Then at some point you found your way into music marketing. Uh, how did that transition happen?
I, when I left Kaiser, um, some friends of mine who put together the group In Vogue, they were starting a record label, and they asked me and a few other people who also did not know what they were doing to help them with their record label. So that was my first gig outside of healthcare, or first gig in the music business. And I worked for them for a couple of years. While I was working for them, the first um, the first internet music recommendations site launched, and a headhunter, or actually a friend of mine who I knew from radio, said, "I think you'll be perfect for this job." And I worked for them. It was a company called Music Buddha, and it was the best job I ever had. I was surrounded by geniuses every day. I learned something new about either about coding or about different genres of music, and made some lifelong friends as a result. But as most internet companies did during that time, they were led by an egomaniac and went the way of the dodo. And as it was starting to crumble under our feet, um, a position opened up at Universal, and someone thought I would be good for it. I then I said, I don't think so. And 3 months later, another position opened, and they thought I'd be good for it. And I said, okay, I'm going to take it, because the writing was all on the wall with the other company. And I went in and interviewed with Tom Beaver, and um, my first day on the job was September 10th, and the next day was 9/11. Um,
Wow.
so that's how I started with Universal.
So I'm curious about this music Buddha thing before we go into Universal. That's something that if, like 10 years later would have been huge, but like was all the recommendations, was it just curated by brilliant people? Was there an algorithm that was being developed? Like how did Music Buddha work?
There was an algorithm that was developed by a gentleman named Brian, who was maybe to this day the smartest man I've ever been around. There was a team of music editors led by Keith and Kent Zimmerman, who were with the Gavin. Um, and I was brought on as a manager, an urban music manager, and I hired different people across the globe really to be subgenre managers for me for things that I wasn't necessarily, you know, they were smarter people for me to hire to do it. So um, for electronic hip hop, French hip hop, Afro beats, um, gospel, spiritual. Um, I hired people to handle that stuff, and it was we would rate the songs. Every song that came through the library, we would rate it, and the user would have a more like this experience. So if I like D'Angelo, then the system's going to turn me on to artists that are like D'Angelo that I may not have heard of. It was incredible. It was the intellectual property was sold for pennies on the dollar when the company went under, and that led to, I think, Rhapsody bought it initially, and then I think after Rhapsody went down, iTunes bought Rhapsody, and that's what started the iTunes situation. Was the algorithm that we put together was the beginning of what became iTunes.
And did did you realize that you were part of music history at that point, even though the company itself kind of went under?
We did. There was one of the things that we did internally is that we came up with this thing called um, we just called it Air Mubu. That's what we called it. Where we would have the library playing overhead in the office. So there's always music playing, but you could tailor it any way you wanted it to. So Brian worked on an interface that would allow you to, the goal before we ran out of money, but the goal at that time was to have an interface that would sit on the um, in the in-flight entertainment system on maybe one of the more forward-thinking brands like Virgin, and you could pick genres and then pick subgenres, and then that would create your station for your entire flight based on your taste.
Yeah, I actually remember playing with that on a Virgin flight in the 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000. So it just never. It just there was just some really. It was just mismanaged, but it was a brilliant group of people that were put together. Kudos to the HR department for making sure that they really hired the right people, except for the CEO, the CEO and the CFO. He was he was just a guy who was more hell bent on being able to tell people that he was a CEO than to actually be a CEO.
Man,
I will say
the
this.
kind of
I will say this, and I not to not to disparage anyone, but it takes an incredible person to have the wherewithal to create a company. That person is not always armed to run a company.
and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's like being a creator and being a manager are two completely different skill sets. So I get it. It still kind of breaks my heart that this great idea could have kept going with the people who started. But I guess, if it still lives on through iTunes, then it still lives on.
It lives on, and you see it, and you're happy about it, and you see, and again, I made some lifelong friendships through that company, and as I said, it was the best job I ever had. Um, it was amazing. You walk into the office, and before you knew it, you've been there for 12 hours, and no one ever tripped. Um, Great energy, great people. Only became toxic at the end. That's because people just were disgusted with the way things were turning out. But yeah, it was great company.
Well, well, yeah, that's awesome that you're able to pull the positive from that experience, and then you took it to work for the biggest record label in the world at the time. Uh, so yeah, it's funny. So you went from kind
To
of
be clear, I didn't work for the label. I worked for distribution.
that's right. I make that mistake frequently. Uh, but even so the biggest distributor, and you went sort of from tech to kind of old school marketing, like flyers and like inter- interfacing with record stores directly. Uh, what was that transition like? Like, was there a lot of learning on the job, or was it a smooth, easy way to like flip from the virtual to the physical?
The answer is yes. That's the answer. There were some great people who worked for the company um, that really helped me hit the ground running. I guess I had a lot of kind of backyard marketing skills from doing parties over the years with my hobby as far as DJing, and I've seen how I was promoted as a DJ, and um, having the DJ background, I knew music. Um, I think the hardest part of my development would have been to distance myself from the music itself. Um, for instance, if I was marketing something and it didn't sell, that I had to distance myself, say, you know what, don't take it that hard just because no one bought it. Don't take it that hard. You didn't write it, you didn't sing on it. It's just your job. You don't have to make sure people like it, but you have to make sure people know it's available. And then it's up to them whether or not they like it. And it took me a little bit to get over that because I was so gung ho about, oh, you got to know about this, you got to know about this, and making sure people. I went the extra mile with every project, and which can be you could divert your energy in different ways, but I didn't know that. So that was the one bump in the road of my learning curve. But other than that, it was leaning on the the people that were there before me, the people my counterparts with different label groups, um, and how they were always able to mix fun with business. Um, and it was always everybody had a root in music, no matter what. The guy who was in charge of selling all the classicals was a huge rocker. He was totally into prog rock, and I could sit and talk with him with about Yes, and talk to him about football, and his space just wasn't classical music. He was selling classical music, but that wasn't his space. And the guy doing catalog work, and the people doing the video, and we worked hand in hand with each label had their own radio promotion staff in the building as well. So you learn the radio side and how you can work hand in hand with radio to fine tune your marketing for retail based on what radio was going to use as their whatever tools they had. I could use those tools for retail, and that always played in my favor. There was a lot of good people in that building that helped me learn. Um, we were able to hire a ton of brilliant interns, which also helped me learn because it kept me uh, honest with what I liked and what I needed to learn, and to be able to feed off of the energy and the expertise of the interns as well. Having that full 360-degree access to the interns was huge for me.
And so at one point you said that there are some releases that you really liked and really thought would do well that just didn't. Is there a particular record that like comes to mind where you think, man, I wish that if that like the right person heard that, if that like the that if everybody was like you, it would have been huge. Is there any release you remember from that of that?
Um, wow. Yeah, there were a couple. Um, I worked a record by a guy named Bubba Sparks that I thought was I really liked him. I liked what he and Timberland were putting together. I really thought it was cool. I liked his team. He had a manager, a guy named Bobby. Um, we really worked well together. I thought that record was going to do much bigger than it did. Um, there was a guy, a producer, who was part of a group. They had a song called "Holla at a Playa," and he then left and became he was already a producer, but he left the group and became a producer. And I thought that album could have done better. Um, there was an artist who has been part of the whole Outcast family and the Dungeon family from the very beginning. He had a solo deal through DreamWorks. His name was Sleepy Brown. I thought that record was going to be awesome. Um, and DreamWorks folded as we were getting ready to launch that record, which then he had to. It was shelved, and then Interscope decided to pick it up, and it just didn't really fit with what Interscope wanted to do. But I thought that was a good record. The Floetry project, although it had moderate commercial success, I thought it was a brilliant record. Um, and it also fell victim to DreamWorks folding. They were picked up by Interscope, I think, but then Interscope broke them up. So and Marsha, it was a duo, and Marsha Ambrosius then had a solo deal with Aftermath, which didn't. So Floetry just kind of ceased to exist. But the record sold 500,000 copies, even through amid all that turmoil. It could have been, I thought, double platinum. It was a really, really good record.
Yeah, I think you gave me that Floetry CD back in the day, if I remember right, actually.
A lot of
Uh,
campaigning for
I
Floetry. I was campaigning. I probably gave it to you. I gave so many. I did everything I could for that record. When you talk about going above and beyond, I really I believed in the record. I believed in the girls. I believed in them. I thought that they were it was next level. They had a song. The first single was called "Floetic," which I thought was maybe the worst song on the record. And but the powers that be thought that that's what they needed to push out. But they had another song. They gave us an advance. This was back in the day when they would give us advances, and I took the record home. And you know what? I'm lying. I did not take it home. I sat in the parking lot. I listened to it in my car, and there was a song I just kept rewinding, and I just told my bosses at the time. I said, "Hey, we need to scrap this whole Floetic thing. This song here is what's going to happen." And I think I'm not the only one who felt that way because they did push that out as a second single, and it really moved them to the next level. It was a song called "Say Yes." It was a beautiful song, amazing performance of the song. It was very cool, which led to them actually releasing, which is very rare. I think, as far as my knowledge, in the space of R&B, I've only seen it done a couple times, where someone has a debut album and then before their second album comes out, they come out with a live version of their debut album. Jill Scott did it, and Floetry did it.
yeah, I mean that's rare in any circumstance. Yeah, R&B or otherwise. But yeah, I do remember that happening. Also, I mean, both Floetry and Jill Scott are pretty well regarded for their live show. Uh, yeah, yeah, and I remember the Floetry reunion being huge, or at least almost bigger than the original Floetry or Floetry era, which is good. That means it eventually caught on.
It did. It did. And Marsha had her own success um, as a soloist. Natalie had moderate success, but she mainly stayed in the UK. Um, they're both terrific mothers now, and they did have when was that? Maybe 3 years ago. They did a reunion tour, which was critically acclaimed and did well in the box office as well.
Yeah, so you did it. It just took 15 extra years.
I didn't. I'm not gonna say I did anything. They did it. I just that was just an example of something that I really, really believed in. And when you work closely with these artists, you know very early on that they got something. You're not the only one that feels that way. You know, they were signed for a reason. Somebody in that building, thought they saw something. You look at somebody like Robin Thicke. When we first had Robin Thicke, he was, long haired, BMX bike, skateboard kid, um, could sing, but it was not the you know, slick artist that he became. But somebody believed in him from the very beginning, and there was talent there. We're on the tail end. We don't get a chance to on the marketing side. We don't really affect any of the A&R decisions or even the um, kind of stylizing the artist. We don't we we don't really get to affect that at all. Very rarely. I did have a counterpart, however, who took a picture of a band at a show, and that picture became the album artwork, the cover art for the next album, I believe.
Wow, do you remember what band that is?
I think it was Snow Patrol, I think.
You're with Universal for a while. You've already said that the Universal Gate crew was amazing. You have this great tendency to work with crews that are really wonderful people. You speak very lovingly of all of the people you've worked with. Um, but so at Universal, you had another like the Universal crew in San Francisco at one point disbanded. They closed the SF office. And what was it like having to like say goodbye or to professionally kind of part ways with such a tight knit group of people?
It was tough. I learned everything I know about the music business through their eyes, and there were some really talented people who really believed in the power of music in that office. And when they made the decision to close that office and we all had to work from home, it was definitely it took a minute to get used to not being um, in that collaborative environment. Um, I worked hand in hand with um, a brother we both love, Gary Baker, and I used to just bug the mess out of him because I would leave my jazz music playing while I went downstairs to the mailroom and just I was bugged. That is one of my fondest memories is the the look of annoyance he would have on his face when I came back up to the office. Yo, can you turn your music down? Um, it's just so many funny people, fun experiences, and just very unique interactions with artists because of the magic of that team that they put together in San Francisco. It's great from um, Hiroshi, who this dude was our mailroom um, clerk. Is that the best way? I don't know how to say that right. Mailroom clerk, I guess, was his position. but he really did everything. He had a really unique bond with any artist that came to our office. I mean, this guy became friends with everyone from 50 Cent to Rihanna. He was down with everybody. He was he was down with Kim Kardashian when Kim Kardashian used to date Nick Cannon. And Nick Cannon came to the office and they left her in the green room with the Russian, which was a mistake. I mean, there's so many cool people who work there. And I will say that I agree. I am lucky. I have some lifelong friendships from my days there. Um, Amy Brown, D. B. Johnson, uh, Jay Gopez, Eddie Capobianco. I talk to these people all the time. Jennifer Otter. I talk to them all the time. Gwen Shin. Yeah, great people, brilliant people.
Jen Otter's book about listening to records is amazing. Which I just need to say that just on the podcast, just so I get it out there. That book is phenomenal. Have you read it? Yeah,
Very cool. Yeah, I have a copy. I went to the book signing. I told her I wouldn't miss it. I went to the book signing. I'm very proud of her.
yeah. By the way, Jen Otter, if you're listening, I will be asking you to do this podcast too at some point.
You might have to make 2 episodes out of the Outer Vision.
I'm sure of that. Actually, I'll have the American and European stories. What was the first thing you did after getting let go from Universal?
I started my own marketing company. I took the tools that I learned from Universal and just decided to go out and find clients that I could help, that I could teach them how to find a way when there is no way, to you know, maximize their strengths, use the strengths of their biggest competition to fortify their own weaknesses. You know, I went and got a bunch of books and learned what a SWOT analysis was and applied the book knowledge to the real world knowledge that I just gained, and started working with publicists, started working with publicity companies that handle local publicity and marketing for films. So then I started working with studios. So I'm currently doing that for, it's been on hold, obviously, since COVID started, but for live theater, for film, it's been enriching. It's been very cool. About face imaging and consulting. That was the first pivot. Everything happens for a reason. When I was let go from Universal, my offer was accepted on my home on that Monday. On that Wednesday, I got a letter of separation from Universal. So yeah, ouch, huge ouch. Panic strikes when you're dealing with that while you're in closing. However, if I wasn't released from Universal, I wouldn't have had the time to dedicate to my home and dedicate to my family, because my father then, a few months after that, was stricken with a debilitating stroke. And I had the freedom to be a support for my family. So everything happens for a reason. Everything.
So you started your own business. Uh, did you have anybody that kind of helped guide you through the odds and ends of starting your own business, or did you learn all that on the fly?
Again, yes. um, I read some books. I had really good relationships with the independent record stores that I was dealing with, who were entrepreneurs themselves, and I leaned on them to learn how to structure my business in a responsible way. And at this time, I will say, to continue the blessing thread, that is when um, my DJ hobby really went into a whole nother level. We moved into um, touring with concert touring, being the support DJs during concerts. Moved into terrestrial radio. Moved into internet radio. Um, the name that we had that became a brand became even a merchandising brand from that point on. So, you know, again, everything happens for a reason.
You call yourselves the world famous Rick and Russ show. I at first was like, are they really world famous? And then I looked at your tour history and realized, yes, you actually are world famous.
But that came as a joke. Yeah, it was. We Rick and I started DJing together in the late '80s as just a hobby, just doing parties here and there, just fun stuff, parties. And he's a very slender man, tall, and I'm a bulky man. So one of the other DJ crews was joking around, and it was kind of, we were making our bones right along the same time as Ren and Stimpy was becoming popular. So they were calling us Rick and Russ, like Ren and Stimpy. So they started saying it as a joke. I said, okay, let's build it up, and we took it and played around with it, and I got some graphics together and kind of made it look like it was a circus. And one day, some DJs, we were all sitting around at an event where they bringing artists out, and you meet all the DJs, and guys were talking about, so where are you playing this weekend? And we blurted out, oh, we're playing in Chicago this weekend, because we were playing at Northwestern. And one of the guys at the table said, oh, so you guys are world famous now, huh? And that became a running joke. And I just took it and ran with it, and created this logo that made it look like a circus, like Ringling Brothers, but it looked like the world famous Rick and Russ show. And it stuck. And it really worked in our favor.
Have you had any experiences or gigs where you looked around and thought to yourself, man, should I be here?
Not like that, but I did have a moment. I did have a moment. We were opening for Earth, Wind, and Fire, and we were on stage. They had us positioned on stage, and it was, I had a moment where I turned around, because I was very interactive with the audience. And for whatever reason, I turned around and had my back to the audience, and I was face to face with the drumhead of Earth, Wind, and Fire. And it just hit me that I'm on stage with Earth, Wind, and Fire. It really hit me at that moment, and I was dumbfounded and had to put the microphone down for a second so I could kind of just get my wits about me, because it really hit me that I am sharing the stage with one of the greatest bands that have ever done it. That was one moment. I had a moment where we were hired to do a private gig it was a corporate gig, and they hired us and Stevie Wonder. And the employees did not know who the band was going to be. So I was tasked to get the employees hyped up. As I said his name, I got caught up in the moment. It was huge. And then as the techs moved our equipment off and Stevie walked right past us to go right on stage, I'm sitting here like, I'm on stage with Stevie Wonder. This is not bad. This is kind of cool. Yeah, I had a couple of those moments where after the fact, or actually in the middle of it, it dawns on you that the scope of what you're doing. I've had a moment where I got a chance to open up for Level 42, which is one of my favorite bands. And there was, when we finished, then there was a little bit of a break before they came on. So as I'm walking off the stage, they're in the wings getting ready to come on. And the band leader, Mark, he, says, I've been playing for years, and I've never had a DJ play like you before us. Would you be interested in coming to Los Angeles and opening up for us tomorrow night? What do you say? Yeah. I couldn't do it. We had a gig. I couldn't do it. But it was one of those moments. Oh my God, I think I might have a future in this. It's kind of fun.
That is wow. That's mind blowing. Uh, Geez. Okay, so you've had good success. I'm realizing I don't even think we're gonna have time for me to ask you about your TV show. I'll ask you anyways. So, I believe it's called "I Remember This Song" on Coffee. How did that come to be?
Yeah, I remember that song. I was asked by a gentleman who used to work for, I believe he worked for iHeart, and then he moved to Intercom, and then he left Intercom and wanted to start his own television show. And he brought us in initially as a consultant, and then we weren't supposed to be on air talent, and then he decided to put us on air, and it worked out. And we've had some really cool regional success. It's been on hold as far as a TV show has kind of moved to an online experience, but it's still fun. Um, it's been fun. I didn't realize. I never thought I had a face for camera. I still don't think I have a face for camera, but it's just fun to sit on a panel with people who are just as passionate about music and often much more educated about music than I am. So I can sit and listen and learn and participate. It's been fun.
Yeah, man, you're so humble about your music nerddom, whereas it's abundantly clear that you could dust any human being on earth at music trivia in almost any genre just based on this conversation.
That is so not true. I get with the show. You interview other people. Other people sit on the panel, and you're saying, "Yeah, yeah, I didn't know that. I did not know that either. I had no clue that happened." Which is fun because I never want to stop learning. I never want to stop learning, and you learn that also when you're on tour. And you learn a lot from the touring musicians who are also session musicians, um, and people who artists that you work with over the years at Universal have remained friends, like like Tariq and Amir from the Roots, and Sherry, who's I want to know as much as I can, and I want to share as much as I can. As much as I want to learn, I want to share.
That is lovely. You're doing a lot of good stuff now. Rick and Rush shows DJing on Twitch, but I want to close out with my favorite question that people also hate when I ask them. Uh,
So you begin your show with a hate, and you end your show with
yeah, I don't get why people are willing to do this podcast.
a hate.
Uh, so if you could go back to 13-year-old Russell Gatewood getting his mind blown at that high school dance, uh, what would you want to say to him now about what you've accomplished?
I see why people hate that. Don't don't ever give up. It's within reach. It may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but it's within reach. Just stay true to your passion.
That's a beautiful and concise thing. So thank you so much, Russell, for joining me on this today. Uh, I learned a lot about you that I didn't know from working with you as an intern at Universal many moons ago. Uh, yeah, this might go down as one of the most informative ones of these yet. To thank Russell Gatewood for coming on the show. Uh, Tune in next week, and you'll have another episode, and probably another episode the week after that. Yeah, and at some point I'm going to take a break because making these is hard work, and I'm doing it all alone. Uh, yeah, in fact, if anyone wants to be an editor or a producer on this or wants to help me out, I wouldn't mind that. So if you're interested in an unpaid podcasting internship, you could probably learn a lot more from somebody else, but I'll still accept it. Dakin, Dakin, at spinningplatters.com. All right, enjoy.